Chapter 33. Watch and Wait. The bullet was lying on the kitchen table, a small lead ball with a tuft of boggart fur still stuck to it. It sat menacingly in the middle of Aunt Zelda's newly scrubbed table. The boggart lay quietly in a tin bath on the floor, but he looked too small, thin, and unnaturally clean to be the boggart they all knew and loved. A broad bandage made of a torn sheet was wrapped around his middle, but already a red stain was spreading across the whiteness of the cloth. His eyes fluttered slightly as Jenna, Nico, and Boy 412 crept into the kitchen. "He's to be sponged down with warm water as often as we can," said Aunt Zelda. "We mustn't let him dry out, but do not get the bullet wound wet, and he needs to be kept clean. No mud for at least 3 days. I've put some yarrow leaves under his bandage, and I'm just boiling him up some willow bark tea. It will take the pain away." "But will he be all right?" asked Jenna. "Yes, he'll be fine." Aunt Zelda allowed herself a small, strained smile as she stirred the willow bark around a large copper pan. "But the bullet! I mean, who would do this?" Jenna found her eyes drawn to the ball of black lead, an unwelcome and threatening intruder that posed too many nasty questions. "I don't know," said Aunt Zelda in a low voice. "I've asked Boggart, but he's in no state to speak. I think we should keep watch tonight." So, while Aunt Zelda tended the Boggart, Jenna, Nico, and Boy 412 took themselves and the preserve pots outside. Once they were in the chill night air, Boy 412's young army training took over. He scouted around for somewhere that would give a good view of all the approaches to the island, but at the same time give them somewhere to hide. He soon found what he was looking for: the chicken boat. It was a good choice. At night the chickens were safely shut away in the hold of the boat, leaving the deck free. Boy 412 clambered up and crouched down behind the dilapidated wheelhouse. Then he beckoned Jenna and Nico to join him. They climbed into the chicken run and passed the preserve pots up to Boy 412. Then they joined him in the wheelhouse. It was a cloudy night, and the moon was mostly hidden, but every now and then it appeared and shone a clear white light over the marshes, giving a good view for miles around. Boy 412 cast an expert eye over the landscape, checking for movement and telltale signs of disturbance, just as he had been taught to by the ghastly deputy hunter Catchpole. Boy 412 still remembered Catchpole with a shudder. He was an extremely tall man, which was one of the reasons he had never made it to be hunter. He was just too visible. There were also many other reasons, such as his unpredictable temper, his habit of clicking his fingers when he got tense, which often gave him away just as he had reached his prey, and his dislike of too many baths, which had also saved those he hunted who had a keen sense of smell, provided the wind was blowing in the right direction. But the main reason Catchpole had never made it to hunter was due to the simple fact that no one liked him. Boy 412 didn't like him either, but he had learned a lot from him. Once he had got used to the temper tantrums, the smell, and the clicking. And one of the things that Boy 412 remembered was watch and wait. That's what Catchpole used to say over and over again until it stuck in Boy 412's head like an irritating tune. Watch and wait. Watch and wait. Watch and wait, boy. The theory was that if the watcher waited long enough, the prey would surely reveal itself. It may be only the slight movement of a small branch, the momentary rustling of leaves underfoot, or the sudden disturbance of a small animal or bird, but the sign would surely come. All the watcher had to do was wait for it. And then, of course, recognize it when it came. That was the hardest part, and the bit that Boy 412 was not always very good at. But this time, he thought, this time, without the pungent breath of the revolting Catchpole breathing down his neck, he could do it. He was sure he could. It was cold up in the wheelhouse, but there was a pile of old sacks stacked up there, so they wrapped themselves in them and settled down to wait, and watch, and wait. Although the marshes were still and calm, the clouds in the sky were racing past the moon, one moment obscuring it and plunging the landscape into gloom, the next rolling away and allowing the moonlight to flood over the marshland. It was in one of these moments, when the moonlight suddenly lit up the criss-cross network of drainage ditches that covered the Moran marshes, that Boy 412 saw something, or he thought he did. Excited, he grabbed hold of Nico and pointed in the direction where he thought he had seen something. But just at that moment the clouds covered the moon again. So, crouched in the wheelhouse, they waited, and watched and waited some more. It seemed to take forever for the long, thin cloud to wander across the moon, and as they waited, Jenna knew that the last thing she wanted to see was someone or something making its way through the marsh. She wished that whoever it was who had shot the boggart had suddenly remembered that they had left the kettle boiling on the fire and had decided to go home and take it off before their house burned down. But she knew they hadn't, because suddenly the moon had come out from behind the cloud, and Boy 412 was pointing at something again. At first, Jenna couldn't see anything at all. The flat marshland stretched below her as she peered through the old wheelhouse, like a fisherman searching the sea for the sign of a shoal of fish. And then she saw it. Slowly and steadily, a long black shape was making its way along one of the distant draining ditches. "It's a canoe," whispered Nico. Jenna's spirits rose. "Is it Dad?" "No," whispered Nico. "There are 2 people, maybe 3, I can't be sure." "I'll go and tell Aunt Zelda," said Jenna. She got up to go, but Boy 412 put his hand on her arm to stop her. "What?" whispered Jenna. Boy 412 shook his head and put his fingers to his lips. "I think he thinks you might make a noise and give us away," whispered Nico. "Sound travels a long way over the marsh at night." "Well, I wish he'd say so," said Jenna edgily. So Jenna stayed in the wheelhouse and watched the canoe make steady progress, unerringly picking its way through the maze of ditches, passing by all the other islands, and heading straight for theirs. As it came closer, Jenna noticed that something about the figures looked horribly familiar. The large figure in the front of the canoe had the concentrated look of a tiger stalking its prey. For a moment, Jenna felt sorry for the prey until, with a jolt, she realized who that was. It was her. It was the hunter, and he had come for her.